it's just not fun to eat when you're not hungry. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever is on your mind, be it bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, contests. Of course, the Arnold Classic, hard to believe, is 3 months away, less than 3 months away. The announcements was a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to start to see some of the rumblings. Who's going to stay in, who may drop out. We're going to start to see progress pictures. We've already started seeing them. But they're going to ramp up over the course of the next few weeks. So a lot to look forward to over the course of the next few weeks. Also on the Instagram page, official_RxMuscle, we dropped a condensed schedule of the open class for 2024, including the cutoff date for the 2024 Olympia. So that resource is available on our Instagram page. We're going to go straight into the questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Battling a bit of a throat thing. I think it's going around. Everybody getting affected.
I noticed. Yeah, I hope you don't have COVID. No. A lot of people have gotten COVID that I am like a coach for. I was surprised.
Yeah, COVID and what's the RSV, right? That's the other one.
I haven't seen so many of that, but that might be in New York. It's more. You know.
Yeah, no, that's the hot thing right now amongst the kids. So
kids. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure my son had it. Or his cousins, friends, everyone has something right now. So anyway, but so I apologize in advance.
Because it's cold up there, Sid.
You know what though? You say that it's 46 degrees. Now I know for you, 46 degrees is probably like Arctic, but for me, 46 degrees is not bad. It's actually tolerable. It's actually like probably the limit of which it should be in the winter. Right. Anything less than it, then you start to feel it. Anything more, that's a bonus for this time of year.
I'm actually going to be in New York. Sid, did you know that?
Really? When? No, I didn't.
Going to visit. Yeah, I'm going to visit my sister on next Thursday. A week from this Thursday, I'll be in New York for the weekends. Maybe we could catch up.
We'll do something in person for sure. That'll be fun. Yes. We'll meet up at Bev's. We'll do something from there.
Yeah,
good times. Yeah. All right. Good to know. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell right now on the channel, all new episode of After Hours of Heavy Muscle Radio. We had a bit of a double dip for Jimmy the Bull and Lee Priest's new show, The Confessional, because one was recorded the prior week, whatever, but a lot of craziness. We weren't able to get it up. So anyway, sort of back-to-back episodes. So you essentially get 3 doses of Lee Priest on the channel right now. So go check it out. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit that like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. Again, these first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Is a PPL, so I guess push, pull, leg split, more effective than a one body part, then he kind of puts in parentheses a bro split. Now, bro split, I guess if you want to expand it out, sometimes it's one body part a day, sometimes it's 2 body parts a day. But again, I guess if you go from PPL versus 1 to 2 body parts a day, which would you say is more effective? Who, if anyone, would benefit from a PPL?
Yeah. Very good question. I haven't had, a lot of people don't realize I have a lot of really good insights into training, even though I don't train many people in the gym anymore. All my clients that I work with, I have them send me training videos. Now that videos are so easy to kind of send to each other, I'm like, you know what? Shoot video of doing chest, shoot video of you doing shoulders, so I can critique the form. And what I find a lot of times is that the reason why people don't make progress is because they're not training properly. They're either doing too much volume, they're not doing full range of motion, their form is not good, or they have a weak body part and they're training it 3 times a week, which is making it even weaker because it's not recovering. So, I've experimented with different combinations of body parts, and I personally have found that one body part per day, once a week, seems to work ideally because it gives your body enough chance to recover from the workout, so that and it keeps your mind fresh. When you have to do a body part twice a week, you get burnt out on it. Let me tell you, I noticed that firsthand. That was one of the things I was always dreading doing the body part. I just did it. It felt like I did it 2 days ago. And even if it was 3 or 4 days ago, it was just too much. And I felt like I was getting burnt out on doing that. Likewise, I tried push-pull legs, one day, which is essentially one day you're doing all the pushing movements, which would be shoulders, chest, triceps. And then the pulling movements are back and biceps. And then, you're doing legs on, its own day, which is always a good idea because legs is a big body part. But what I found was that on the push day, it was just too much. Chest, shoulders, and triceps, there's no way you can get a good workout on all those. Something is going to, it was always like the first body part I trained was the one that got the most out of it. So if I did chest first, my chest was good, but my shoulders got a crappy workout. And then triceps were I almost didn't get any pump in my triceps because I was just so fried from the other 2 exercises. To me, push-pull legs is really terrible to do because it's like you're trying to ask the same body parts to do more and more and more on the same day, and they just can't. After a couple sets, they're burnt out. That's it. So I find that it's better to spread them out. Now, likewise, because you're spreading them out, if you're doing chest one day, you're doing legs one day. Excuse me, doing chest one day, you're doing shoulders one day, and you're doing arms one day, or just even biceps on one day, whatever the case may be. You're actually training, similar body parts 3 times a week. So you don't have to do, each body part twice a week because they're actually getting trained 3 times a week already. Because when you do shoulders, you're definitely working your chest a little. And when you do chest, you're definitely working your shoulders a little. And when you're doing both those body parts, you're definitely working your triceps a little. So why would you then go and do another whole round of that in the same week? It's just too much. Very few people can recover from that. I tell you who can recover from that, Ronnie Coleman, because he did it for years. 6 days a week of training, every 3 days, he would repeat a body part. But he's a genetic freak. You don't really want to do what he did because most people cannot recover from that. So my suggestion is to break your body part into individual days, back one day, shoulders one day, chest one day. You can work some accessory muscles like calves or abs and stuff like that on those, or forearms on those days. But now you have the option of putting arms on its own day, which is what I used to do. Or if, when I was prioritizing arms because they were a lagging body part for me at one point, I was doing triceps on triceps and calves on one day, and I was doing biceps, forearms, and abs on another day. And I was doing an 8-day split. I've talked about this before. So every 8 days I was repeating everything. So I was still getting 2 days a week off, but I was training. It was taking me 6 days to train my entire body. But I think if you did a 5-day split with arms on the same day, I think that would be adequate. And I found, like I said, of all the experimenting I did, that seemed to work the best throughout my entire career. 3 days on, 2 days, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, repeat. It's like a 7-day cycle. And I think that if you do that, you're going to see the best results. Like I said, I just think that push-pull is just too much, pushing too much, pulling on the same day.
Second question, again, these questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. What do you suggest instead of using Tren in the offseason, assuming one is using EQ and Deca? It says EQ and Deca and Tren, but I guess so if they're using that combination, what would you suggest as an alternative to Tren?
Okay. Yeah, some people don't do well on Tren, and it's because sometimes it messes up the digestion. Some people get hiccups from it. Some people can't sleep at night from it. So, in the off-season, Tren didn't bother me quite as bad as it did in the pre-contest, to be honest with you, because when you're hungry and you're irritable from the Tren, that's like a deadly combination. But if you can't do Tren, you could do Masteron in the off-season. I've given guys 200 milligrams 3 times a week of Masteron with testosterone, and that seemed to work really well. If you can get injectable Dianabol, that's another good combination. Injectable Dianabol tests. Now you can do oral dianabol too, but a lot of times the orals can kind of blunt your appetite a little, which is going to make it hard for you to eat in the off season. Probably of all the people I work with, and I have a lot of clients, from competitive bodybuilders, women, everyone has the most trouble with the off season eating enough food, because it's just not fun to eat when you're not hungry. When you first start on the off season, you're starving because you're usually coming off a contest diet or some kind of diet you did. So you can eat your appetite is unlimited, but then eventually you hit this like plateau where you just don't want to eat anymore. And if you don't eat, you don't grow. And so finding a way to eat is important. Taking orals sometimes can blunt your appetite a little bit, and that's not a good thing. So you want to watch out for that. Now, these questions were really good, and these are questions that are on the Dave Palumbo Experience app. All the app members can ask whatever questions they want. I answer them all in an open forum. I take the best questions and do a Q&A video every week for the app members. It's only $29 a month. We've had a lot of signups lately. If you're a serious bodybuilder or you're a serious coach and you want to constantly keep learning and expanding your education, you could even probably use this for your continuing education on your personal training certification, because you need to keep educating yourself and keeping up. And this is an easy way to do it, because I'm constantly reminding you and reinforcing these concepts of how diet works, how nutrition works, how the performance enhancing drugs work. And you have the ability to ask me as many questions as you want. Plus, you can go back and watch all my videos and all my writings that I've ever done. And so it's a really good learning experience. You can check it out at the Android store or the iTunes store.
So again, those two questions are from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. We now go to our Facebook questions and Instagram questions. If you're not following us on Facebook, just search for RxMuscle on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. We have a ton of good questions. See how many we can get to. James Walters, you being a supplement company owner, one right up your alley. Thoughts on the FDA not regulating supplement companies? How can businesses quality control microbiological contaminations and factual amounts of ingredients if not regulated?
It's a very valid question, and it concerns me because, and I'm not really worried about contamination as much, because if you know anything about the nutrition business, if you're a manufacturer, you have to test all the raw ingredients that come into your facility for impurities. So heavy metals, most likely you're not getting tainted unless you have some guy making it in his house or something like that. But most big brands, that are well known are doing it through a legitimate, FDA approved manufacturing facility. So there's not going to be contaminants in there. What you need to worry about is what they're actually putting in the product. So in other words, are they using cheap whey isolates? Are they protein spiking? Are they using fillers? Are they adding hidden sugars and stuff like that? That's what bothers me, because I know that, Species Nutrition is a very high-end line. We hold, I test my products constantly to make sure my manufacturers are doing, putting the right stuff in there. And it's important, and if I have to charge more for my products because they're a higher end, I don't want to compete against a company that's selling supposedly the same product, which they never are, for, $10 cheaper than mine, when I know they're using a junkier, ingredient, or they're maybe skimping on something. So I would like to see FDA possibly testing products to confirm what's in there is actually in there, and then maybe giving like an FDA stamp of approval. And it could be voluntary even, you know what I mean? It doesn't, they might come out with a program. Hey, if you want to be verified by the FDA, here, you send your products here with all your paperwork. We test the products. We'll give it a stamp of approval if everything meets regulation. And, and then this way, certain companies will have that branding. I remember Bill Phillips was doing this back in the 90s, where if you wanted to be an advertiser on Muscle Media 2000, he would test your products. And if they met his stamp of approval, he'd put his own Bill Phillips, whatever stamp of Muscle Media 2000 stamp of approval. And everyone would know that, hey, that product was a good quality product because Bill tested it and it tested out. So I would love to have that. As a person who has full transparency and honesty in my products, I love that. I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there that just don't want it. Why FDA hasn't gotten involved? Now, having said that, I don't want FDA regulating everything we do and saying, hey, you know what? You can't sell this, you can't sell that. We want to make it a prescription. That I'm not for, because they would love to make every vitamin a prescription by prescription. I'm sure they would. And that's just not acceptable either.
Let's go to Mike Molinaro. Does injectable L-carnitine actually help restore androgen receptors if you're actually taking the correct dose per body weight daily? And can you take it year round, or are there diminishing negative effects?
I know there's some anecdotal and some studies maybe that suggest that. I don't really buy into the whole injectable L-carnitine increasing androgen receptor sensitivity. Just don't see it. Haven't seen the results of that. I don't think there's any practical application where you might theoretically say it might theoretically work, but I don't see any people saying, you know what, I'm using injectable L-carnitine and all of a sudden my gains have gone through the roof. I just don't see it, and so sometimes when things sound too good to be true, they're really not true. Originally L-carnitine was, as far as I know, L-carnitine being sold as a fat mobilizing agent. Obviously, the problem with oral L-carnitine is that it, sometimes it doesn't get absorbed into the cells very well, and that's why most companies use a form of like acetyl L-carnitine or propionyl L-carnitine. It's more fat soluble. It seems to get into the cells a little better. But most bodybuilders don't really have deficiencies of L-carnitine. So, getting back to the original question, do I think it increases androgen receptor sensitivity? No. Sorry, that's just from everything I've read on it and seen. I'm not buying it.
What was the question about? Oh yeah, the torque method. Michael Moore. Have you ever heard of the, quote, torque method of chiropractic use? You use a tool to adjust, also working with your nerves. It's worked for getting my hips, but my left calf has lost about 1/2 inch and half the strength. So I guess the torque method, if you've heard of it, and any applications for bodybuilders.
I know what it is. It's a tool they use to help align the body, but I'm not really, I have never had it done on me. And I don't like to usually comment on like therapies unless I've actually had someone work on me with the therapy. So I can give you like a firsthand practical response to how I felt it felt. I'm all for like alternative therapies and trying them. Unfortunately, a lot of them promise too much and they don't deliver. I always say, you're better off under promising and over delivering. But there seems to be some application for it. But the problem is, I think, some of these chiropractors who use it think that it can cure everything. And I think that's why people leave dissatisfied. I think there are certain situations that probably will, or conditions that would respond better than others. To me, the best results I ever got from chiropractic was when I went to my friend, Dr. Derling Castro, who still practices in Smithtown, New York on Long Island. And because he did a combination of active release techniques, ART, with chiropractic, because a lot of times, you could be out of alignment, but a lot of times the reason why your spine is out of alignment is because the muscles, get damaged. You're working out, you damage some muscle, you pull a little muscle, and then scar tissue builds up, and then the scar tissue pulls on the muscle, and that pulls like a rib head out of place, or it pulls a vertebral process out of place, so just a little bit. And then you start getting a little pain and discomfort, and you go to the chiropractor and they pop it back in place. The problem is the scar tissue and the muscle is still there. So as soon as you leave the office and you move your shoulder backwards, the thing pops right back out of place again. ART gets in there and strips that adhesion, that scar tissue out, so that now the muscle is not being pulled in the wrong plane of motion and it's back where it should be. And then when you pop that whatever you're popping back in place, it stays there. And so that's why I think the combination of ART chiropractic is the way to go. So if you can find a practitioner in your area that does both, that is going to give you, and I think is going to yield the best results, to be honest.
Been getting a lot of questions regarding Sam Sulek, obviously really becoming one of the breakout stars in bodybuilding and fitness really across the world. Angel RDZ wants to know, would you invite he's saying that you should invite Sam Sulek for an interview, but we've been getting a lot of questions as to whether you would reach out to Sam to get him on the show for an interview.
100%. I'd love to interview Sam because you know what? I like the fact that he kind of reminds me of not necessarily myself, but a little bit because, I was in that stage where I couldn't gain weight and I was doing the McDonald's and I was eating like Haagen-Dazs at night and I was still ripped and I had a very similar metabolism to him. So I can only imagine, I always say to myself, can you imagine if there was like cell phones back then and there was social media? If I would have been, filming myself at McDonald's every day and going out for we used to go at midnight. I would go to the diner. People who don't live in New York don't know what we're talking about. There's diners 24 hours in New York. You can go get anything you want at any time of the day. And I would go and I would eat like literally like a 2-pound like steak burger. It was like basically a big hamburger, a chopped sirloin. I think they call it chopped sirloin steak or something like that. And I would eat like fries with it. And I would eat sometimes I would eat chocolate chip pancakes with it. I would do this at 12 midnight. And then I'd go home and I would actually stay up and do some computer work. This is in the fledgling years of, where they had dial-up modems and you had to wait 20 minutes for the thing to dial up. And then I would actually have a shake and go to bed at 3, 4 in the morning and sleep till 11 the next day. And I mean, those are the days. But I did some crazy stuff. I mean, if I would have filmed myself at 12 midnight eating these crazy meals, people would have gone nuts. So I really relate to what Sam's doing. And I think that, a lot of people say it's irresponsible and he shouldn't be doing that. He doesn't have any body fat on him. He's obviously burning through all these calories. He's not telling anyone else to go out there and do that. He's saying, this is what I do because I have such a fast metabolism. The only way to keep up with that metabolism is to eat these crazy amounts of food and these very calorie dense foods. And look, I'm growing from it because it's slowing it's actually allowing my metabolism to utilize the food and build muscle. And so, sure, I'd love to get him on. If he's interested, we can reach out to him. I'm sure, my friend Fuad would love to get a little extra, publicity on our channel. And I'd love to give it to them, because I know he works for him. So let's reach out to him, Sid, and we'll see if we can get him on.
Yeah. Let's go to Alexander Jeramazov. Clen after show is over for about 3 more weeks. Question, can it prevent or at least minimize the weight gain having taken into consideration diet wouldn't be at 100%?
He's talking about post-contest?
Post-contest, yes. 3 to 4 weeks post-contest.
Your metabolism after a show is so freaking fast that you should not have to take a fat burner to not gain weight. If you're getting fat in 3 weeks after your show, then number one, you probably were never as lean as you thought you were. Number two, you're probably not working out and just eating junk food and you're not eating, high quality protein. Because I just don't see it. I see a lot of guys get really bloated. They may gain 30 pounds after a show, but that's not fat weight. That's all water weight. So I don't think you need to take Clenbuterol right after a show. Just because I used to, back in the day when I just started taking anabolics, I would do like a Primabol and winstrol cycle. And I'd go off for 10, 12 weeks and I would take Clenbuterol when I went off. Because in my mind, because at the time, Bill Phillips was saying that Clenbuterol was anti-catabolic. You could actually build a little muscle. So I figured, you know what? I wasn't taking it for the fat burning. I was taking it because I wanted to continue building muscle while I was off an anabolic steroid cycle. It probably just leaned me out. I probably never put any muscle on from it, but who knows, But I wouldn't stay on Clen or add Clen in if you weren't using it when you're off. I would just let your body clean out, do your HCG, do your Clomid, stay off another 4 weeks on nothing. I always have my guys take my Testalize product to balance their DHT and estrogen levels so they don't get too high and keep their natural testosterone higher. And, if you really want to, you can stay on a little growth hormone, GH, just to stay anabolic, but I wouldn't mess with Clen, when you're off cycle.
Let's go to Foldiac David Daniel. Thoughts on HGH plus T4? I read somewhere that you're wasting your money if you don't take T4 with HGH.
All right. This is one of these questions that understanding the science of what's going on is very important because people take data and they don't know how to interpret the data because they don't understand the science. And I'm going to explain what I mean. You're on GH. You go for blood work, okay? You say, you know what? Test my thyroid because everyone thinks that GH messes up your thyroid, right? So you test TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is the pituitary hormone that tells your thyroid to produce, T4. Then you got the hormone free T4, which is the inactive thyroid hormone that your thyroid gland produces. And then in the circulation somewhere, your body will convert a T4 into T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. So T3 or triiodothyronine is active thyroid hormone. That's what actually does something. So you have to convert T4 to T3. Now, when you take GH, we all know that it has a direct fat burning effect. If you've ever taken it, it's amps your metabolism. But one of the ways it helps burn fat is it actually causes more T4 in your body to convert to T3. So on blood work, what you'll notice is your T3 levels will be higher and T4 will be lower. Sometimes T4 will go so low that it's actually below the normal range. But if you look at T3, T3 is actually higher sometimes than the normal range, or it's in the high normal range. And because of the fact that T4 doesn't influence metabolism at all, it's all T3, that's not a problem. So yeah, yes, you are low in T4 when you're on GH because you're converting more of it to the active form T3. That doesn't mean that you're not growing or that your thyroid's subpar. If anything, your thyroid is too high because the active thyroid is what defines whether your thyroid is high or low. So just because there's a value that's low, you have to understand why it's low. It's low because GH is making T4 convert to T3 at a higher rate. So there's no deficiency whatsoever. There's no negative side effect to that. It's just an artifact that you're going to see on blood work when you get it taken when you're on GH. Now, not everyone is affected as much as other people. Some people, it's a much more dramatic effect. Some people, it's not. You would think it would be dose related, but it's really not. Sometimes guys take a lot of GH, it doesn't happen. Sometimes they take 1 or 2 IUs and they see that T4, T3 conversion really high. I think it has a lot to do with the genetics of the person. So don't go panic. You don't need to take T4 with GH.
Let's go to Bilal Hamide. Is halotestin really worth taking pre-contest, given its reputation of destroying the body? And what alternatives would be available? I guess he mentions winstrol as one alternative.
Well, halotestin is taken the last 2 weeks only, first of all. So it's not doing any damage to your body in 2 weeks, okay? Certainly not at 20 milligrams a day, which is the dosage that everyone takes. What it is it's a drug that's extremely high in androgens, but it doesn't aromatize, meaning it doesn't convert to estrogen, so there's no fluid retention with it. High androgen drugs like halotestin, trenbolone's another one of them, help store glycogen more efficiently. So you get a harder, fuller look when you're taking halotestin. It has zero anabolic effects. So there's no muscle building effects of halotestin. So there's absolutely no reason to take it off season or during your pre-contest stack because it's not building any muscle. It's just storing glycogen. And when do you actually store glycogen? When you're carbing up at the end for your show. So we only take it the last 2 weeks. So the toxicity is really not a factor. You might be in a bad mood the last 2 weeks, but that's about it. And the truth of the matter is that since trenbolone has become so readily available, trenbolone is very high in androgens too. It's higher in androgens than testosterone. So you probably don't need halotestin. A lot of times if it's available, I have my guys throw it in just because why not? It can't hurt, not for 2 weeks. But if you're on trenbolone, you're probably not going to notice that much of a difference. Back in the early 90s and mid 90s when I was competing, there was no trenbolone around. There was Parabone, which was a long-acting trenbolone. There was no tren acetate. So we all used halotestin the last 2 weeks, and that was just by convention. Everyone used it. And it was actually, you could actually get it. It was actually made by an American pharmacy. They were like these little green-looking mints. And we all used them, like I said, 20 milligrams a day for the last 2 weeks. And it made a difference because it jacked up the androgen content of our bloodstream because we didn't have tren acetate in us. And it definitely gave a harder look, I think, to the body. Now, like I said, if you're on tren acetate already, you might not notice a difference. But once again, it can't hurt.
Let's go to Bodybuilding Expression. Is what separates FIBERLYZE from other products? We'll make sure it's better.
I'll go into my fiber spiel, I guess, because I haven't talked about it that much recently. But, a lot of people eat 6, 7, 8 times a day, And when you're doing that, that's a lot of food in your gut, your small intestine, your large intestine. And unfortunately, most of the food us bodybuilders eat is very low in fiber. Because if we ate high fiber foods all the time, it would bulk up our meals too much. We wouldn't be able to get that much food down. So most people eat rice and chicken, or they eat potatoes and meat, or they eat, oatmeal and eggs. There's not a lot of and even when you do think you're eating fiber, people are like, well, I eat a salad and I have broccoli. That's what we call insoluble fiber. That's not the fiber that our guts really need the most of. Our guts need that's insoluble fiber. Our guts need soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is fiber that absorbs water, okay? And what that does is it bulks the stool up, and it makes the intestinal tract, because there's more volume in the intestines, contract harder and push that stuff out of the body. So it acts as a detoxifier. It binds up cholesterol salts in the gut, lowers LDL cholesterol. I think probably what I've learned over the years, that's the most important function of fiber, not just to help you go to the bathroom and get rid of waste and all the other good things that it does for your body, but the gut bacteria that line the small intestine, that line the colon, all eat. They eat the fiber. They eat soluble fiber. We call it fermentation. They ferment it, but they're actually essentially eating it. So they ferment this soluble fiber, okay? They use it as a food source. It helps them to grow and multiply and be strong and plentiful in the gut. And we know the gut bacteria control, number one, they control the defense of the intestinal tract, so nothing can get into the bloodstream, so you don't get leaky gut. They control the production of certain vitamins like vitamin K and vitamin K, in the gut. They also control neurotransmitters in the brain like serotonin and stuff like that. So the gut, and they also cut off hunger signals as well. So there's a lot of stuff that we're discovering about gut bacteria. It's important to keep them healthy. Soluble fiber does it. But when they actually ferment the soluble fiber, they produce what's called short and medium chain fats. These go into the bloodstream and they go back to the liver, and they tell the liver, stop taking stored glycogen and releasing it into the bloodstream as sugar. So it lowers blood sugar. Okay, so if you are running high fasting blood sugars in the morning, or your blood sugar control is not so good, taking a fiber supplement will actually help that. And a lot of people don't realize that's a really, really potent function of taking a soluble fiber supplement. Now, the problem is with fiber is that, you'd have to eat like 10 bowls of oat bran a day to get enough soluble fiber really, to do what your body needs it to do. But psyllium is like a concentrated soluble fiber source. So you'd have to eat 8 bowls of oatmeal to equal like 1 serving of psyllium. So if you do 2 servings of psyllium per day, you've essentially satisfied your soluble fiber, and it's 2 little, swigs of a shake, and it makes it much more convenient to get the fiber without having to, consume massive amounts of bulky foods in your diet. Having said that, not all psyllium is created equal. Metamucil is probably the most popular psyllium-based fiber supplement on the market. Most of the other fiber supplements are terrible, like Benefiber. They use fiber. It's soluble, but it doesn't do anything. It's not potent enough. That's why it dissolves in water. Most psyllium is you're going to see it. It looks like Jello. It turns to Jello in water. Now, there's high swell rate psyllium, which absorbs more water. It swells more. It turns more into like a sponge inside your intestinal tract. That's more potent. It does the job better. And then there's low swell rate psyllium, which is much cheaper, which is what like a company like Metamucil uses, and some of these other companies that are more, geared towards the mainstream public. I happen to do a lot of research on fiber, and I decided that I'm going to use the highest swell rate psyllium, even though it's the most expensive, because you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And that's why when people use FIBERLYZE versus these other products, they're like, holy mackerel, what a world of difference. I can't believe how much better this works. It's just because I'm using better quality ingredients. And that's the case with anything. I mean, bodybuilders demand the best stuff, and that's why Species Nutrition always uses the highest quality stuff. I mean, our isolate is 28 grams of protein per 33 gram serving size. No protein is that high. They're all like 25 or less because they don't use as high a grade isolate because it's too expensive. And I understand why companies do that. They have to be able to sell product. I sell product based on the education I put behind the product, so I can afford to do that. Some companies don't have that education, component. They only have marketing, so they have to be able to compete price-wise with everyone. And that's why it's so great, the supplement industry, because you can buy the highest quality, you can buy the lowest quality. You have free choice to do whatever you want. But my recommendation is always educate yourself why you're doing what you're doing. If you want to be the best bodybuilder on the planet, or the best bodybuilder that you can be, use the best ingredients. And I always tell people that. It's a very simple equation.
Lomna Sachdeva, can regular consumption of citrulline increase vascularity?
Can it increase vascularity? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, citrulline, we know, converts to nitric oxide, and which is what dilates the blood vessels. Any good pre-workout uses citrulline in there, nowadays, to increase the, quote, pump. The pump is that you're dilating the blood vessels, more blood is engorging the muscles, and you feel a better pump. So yeah, citrulline dilates, and it's, in the old days, we used to use arginine. Arginine worked really well, but what would happen is the enzyme that converts arginine to nitric oxide would run out. So if you used it consecutively too many days in a row, eventually you couldn't create any more nitric oxide because there wasn't enough enzyme around, and then you just didn't get any results. So you had to use, really the only way to make it work was to maybe use it every other day. Nowadays we use citrulline. It doesn't seem to have like a limiting factor. It seems to always work as effectively as it did the day before. So I guess it must use a slightly different enzyme system. But once again, you're not going to build muscle from using a nitric oxide releaser. You're just feeling more of a pump. And that's why I always tell people, look, I want to sell as much pre-workout as I could possibly can. We make, Stimulize, it's a great product. But at the end of the day, it's not a necessity product, meaning that you're not going to build massive amounts of muscle. You might have a better workout because you have better focus, you're more alert, you have a better pump, you have more endurance from the beta alanine in there, but it's not building muscle itself. Whereas a lot of the other ingredients that, essential fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, trace metals, antioxidants, fiber, these are must-use supplements, because if you're deficient in these, it will somehow influence muscle building and fat loss. And so make sure you take the essentials before you start taking the non-essentials.
We'll take a couple of more questions. One about body hair. So it's from, I love the name, more curry, more cunny. I don't know what the cunny means, but we'll leave that to your imagination.
Yeah.
How do you manage body hair for a show? Close shave the night before, hair removal cream. What do you generally advise your clients?
If you have thick hair, Nair and hair removal stuff won't do nothing. I would put Nair. I once tried to put Nair on my legs. It didn't even work. It didn't even take. I think I lost one hair in the legs. Like, my hair was laughing at the stuff. So for men, that doesn't really work well. And you know what? A lot of times it's a very big irritant, so you don't want to use that. Shaving always worked best for me. You can't use laser hair removal if you're a man and you're using steroids, because the steroids regenerate the hair follicles. So that's a waste of money. So you're pretty much left with shaving, okay? And I don't recommend shaving the day before a show, because the day before a show, you don't want to bring irritation to the skin. So if you start shaving the night before, the actual abrasion of the razor on your skin is going to irritate it, which causes a little bit of inflammation in there. Even if you don't necessarily see it with the naked eye, when you're on stage, it could affect it. So my suggestion is, make your last shave. Let's say you're doing a Saturday morning show, Thursday night should be your last shave. And this way, the next day, it gives you a whole day to heal up your body in case you nick yourself or anything like that. And then, you know what? Usually the next day is when you're getting the spray tan put on you. So you don't want to shave and then go right to the spray tan. I mean, it's going to burn. It's not a good idea. Now, I know there are some guys that are super crazy hairy. In those cases, you might have to do, just do a little touch up on certain areas, but I would try to keep the razor off the skin the day before.
But Topman wants to know what to do for blood pressure control, saying that losartan isn't dropping it low enough.
I had a lot of people who have been coming to me and telling me that, they're on telmisartan or valsartan, which is an angiotensin receptor blocker. Those are kind of the new class of drugs that are out there, and they're just not lowering their blood pressure. So then the doctors are winding up putting them on, diuretics, and they're putting them on, which is the worst thing for a bodybuilder to take, right? Because it messes your electrolytes up. Or they're putting them on calcium channel blockers to lower blood pressure, which you don't want to mess up calcium, because calcium is responsible for muscle contraction. And a lot of bodybuilders notice that when they're on calcium channel blockers to lower blood pressure, they get swelling in their legs. It's a common side effect. Not a good idea. So I've been going back to the old faithful, which is what I've been using for like 25 years. ACE inhibitors, ramipril, lisinopril. I think it's a better blood pressure medication. I like it better also because it's kidney protective, because it dilates those kidney tubules. It allows them to filter the blood more efficiently. I think that for bodybuilders, that's the way to go. Now, if you're on like a telmisartan or valsartan and you have good blood pressure control, there's no reason to switch. But if you're noticing you're not getting the blood pressure control you want, you might want to try an ACE inhibitor. Like I said, you really want to stay away from calcium channel blockers, and you definitely want to stay away from the diuretics. Diuretics are for people whose hearts are not efficient. In other words, their hearts are not pumping enough blood. They're getting back up in the lungs of fluid. And what you're basically doing is you're not fixing the problem. You're just getting rid of the fluid that's there. That's not really to control blood pressure in bodybuilders. Bad idea, because when your muscles get dehydrated, what happens? You get tears. Much easier to tear a muscle when you're in a dehydrated state. That's why I always tell people when they go back to the gym, if it's like the day after a show, don't go lifting heavy because you will tear something, because the muscles are much more brittle when they're dehydrated. So take that into consideration.
Take one more question. This one from, oh my God, what was it about? Oh yeah, here we go. From Jay Schelling. The one lift in your career when you look back at and you're most proud of?
That's a good question. Hold on.
Yeah,
I hit the wrong button. Yeah. I would say, just because it was the scariest lift I ever did, when I squatted 700 pounds, okay, I was very scared to do it, because 600, I got up to 600, 6 plates on each side or whatever, 585. I think we would put a 10 on or something like that. But I was doing 600 for 6 reps, which I never thought would happen, because the first time I did 600, I was very scared. And I really wanted to try 700, because I had done 450 or something like that, and I put 700 on the bar, and I had my good friend Vinny Hanzik at the time when he was alive, and we would do legs together, and I trusted him, because I knew that he can squat 900, so he wasn't going to let me fall. Because when you go under a squat bar, you have to just pretend that there's no fear of anything, and so I had to trust that he was going to be able to. If I went down and couldn't get up, he was going to lift me up, because this way I wouldn't tear my quad muscle, and I didn't want to do one of these partial rep things, so I walked back with the weight, which was the hardest part, actually. And because it's so heavy and it's so hard to stabilize that weight, I stepped back and I said, "Are you ready?" He's like, "Yep." And I went down with the weight, and he might have given me just a little oomph, like at the bottom, and I drove it up, and I racked it, and I said, "I will never try it again," because it was so traumatizing to my body to hold that much weight on my back, that even though I was 315, I was huge and I had tremendous legs, it just felt really heavy. And I said, you know what? There's probably no reason why I should have to squat this much weight. If I can do reps with 600, my legs aren't getting any smaller. And I really didn't need any more new size on my legs. So, but I was pretty happy with that lift, because I was really happy that I got under it. And the other lift that I can remember that really gave me validation in my mind, because I was never a good bench presser. When I first started, before I ever took anabolics, I did not have a good bench, because I have very long arms, and I just, I don't have big arms, and for some reason, I just wasn't a good bencher, and I had shoulder impingements, and so little by little, as I got bigger and bigger, I built up to more and more weight. Eventually, I was able to do 405 on an incline bench for 4 reps, which I never thought I'd be able to do, and that was sheerly because I taught myself the right way to bench press, starting from scratch. And it was a factor of how big I was. Also, there's a big component in there, and I would lower the weight under control and squeeze it up. And to me, once I was able to do that and just say, you know what, I benched 405 on an incline bench, like I felt validated, because that wasn't a body part that I was good at. Legs I was always good at, because I always had strong legs, but I wasn't good at that, and I made myself good at that, and I felt really good about that. Now, also 315 behind the neck shoulder presses was pretty impressive too, but I think the 405 bench on the incline was probably my most proud lift.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, we ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our upcoming show segments, whatever content that we have on the channel. Right now on the channel, all new episode of After Hours of Heavy Muscle Radio. We talked about the double dip of Bleed Priest and Jimmy the Bull's new show, The Confessional. Tomorrow, all new episode of Iron Rage. So it's going to be Lee, but we never know who's going to be joining Lee and Dave on the show. Sometimes we've had Valentino, sometimes we have John Romano, sometimes we have both. That and a whole lot more. I'm trying to think what else. We have a ton of content right now on the channel. We did about a month ago now. I mean, time is totally flown by. About a month ago, went to the Dubai Muscle Show. Got a load of content there. We had some impromptu guest posing from Rubiel Mosquero, who's slated to be competing at the Arnold Classic. We had him put on an impromptu guest posing for the fans. wildly popular. That video's approaching 300,000 views, so go check that out. Total free show, so you may get to see him on the Arnold Classic stage in a matter of 3 months. Interviews with some of the biggest legends: Kevin Levrone, Dexter Jackson, Dennis James, Flex Wheeler. I'm trying to think, who am I missing out? And then, of course, we did an on-stage interview. With Phil Heath. No, I was talking about that group interview that we did. We did the on-stage interview, right, with Phil Heath and Ronnie Coleman, Chris Bumstead as well. Yeah, I was trying to think who we left out of that Legends group. But again, a lot of fun, a lot of good content, a lot of informative content. Hearing from some of the legends,
Was Dennis James
really
there?
how they. Yeah, I mentioned Dennis James.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, just really hearing from some of the legends of the sport and really how they dominated bodybuilding over the course of 15 to 20 years. So that on the channel. Now, of course, over the course of the next 2.5 to 3 months, we're going to be loading up with content, not only for the Arnold Classic, but for the IFBB Pro calendar. Again, we've seen over the course of the last 2 or 3 years with the, quality that we've seen at the top of the lineup and some of the infusion of some new and exciting talent. We could be entering, I don't want to say golden era, but we are certainly entering into a very, very, very exciting era of bodybuilding, and we're going to be covering all different angles of it over the course of the next few weeks. So you're not going to want to miss that. Subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below, and as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.